15th chapter, verse 25 to 29. So we'll read the translations for all four verses, and then today we're doing verse 27, so we'll start there.
Does someone want to read the translation?
Let's go in order.
Yeah.
Let's go in.
From 25?
Yes.
One must conquer the modes of passion and ignorance by developing the mode of goodness. And then one must become detached from the mode of goodness by promoting oneself to the platform of Shuddha Sattva. All this can be automatically done if one engages in the service of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. In this way, one can conquer the influence of the modes of nature.
The spiritual master should be considered to be direct
and of the material nature. His lotus feet are sought and worshipped by great saintly persons like Vyasa. Nonetheless, there are fools who consider Lord Krishna as an ordinary human being.
Ritualistic ceremonies, regulative principles, austerities, and the practice of yoga are all meant to control the senses and mind. But even after one is able to control the senses and mind, if he does not come to the point of meditation upon the Supreme Lord, all such activities are simply labor in frustration.
As professional activities or business profits cannot help one in spiritual advancement but are a source of material entanglement, the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies cannot help anyone who is not a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
1-29, right?
Yeah. And then we'll read the Sanskrit, the word by word translation, and we'll continue. So.
Can you zoom in a little bit? We can do control command plus.
Is that okay?
I think that's it.
Eshavai Bhagavan Shakshat Pradhana Purusheshwara Yogeshware Vikram Gyan Girir Lokoya Manyate Naram
Eshavai Bhagavan Shakshat
Vai Bhagavan Shakshat
Pradhana Purusheshwara
Pradhana Purusheshwara
Yogeshwarar Vimragyanagirir
Yogeshwar Vimragyanagir
Lokoyam manyate naram.
Eshavai Bhagavan Shakshat
Pradhana Purusheshvara
Pradhana Purusheshwara Yogeshwar Vimragyanagir
Lokoyam manyate naram.
Lokoya Manyate Naram
Eshavai Bhagavan Sakshat
Eshavai Bhagavan Shakshat
Pradhana Purusheshwara
Pradhana Purusheshwara
Yogeshware Vimragyanagirir
Yogeshware Vimragyanagir
Lokoyam manyate naram
Lokoya Manyate Naram
Eshavai Bhagavan Sakshat
Eshavai Bhagavan Shakshat
Pradhana Purusheshwara
Pradhana Purusheshwara
Yogeshware Vimragyanagirir
Yogeshware Vimragyanagir
Lokoyam manyate naram
Lokoya Manyate Naram
Eshavai Bhagavan Sakshat
Eshavai Bhagavan Shakshat Pradhana Purusheshwara
Yogeshwar Vimragyanagir
Yogeshwar Vimragyanagir
Lokoyam manyate naram.
Lokoya Manyate Naram. And then the translation.
Synonyms?
Yes.
Word to word, yes.
Yes. Esha, this. Vai, indeed. Together.
Together.
Yeah. Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shakshat, directly. Pradhana, the chief cause of the material nature. Purusha, of all living entities of the Purusha avatar, Lord Vishnu. Ishvara, the supreme controller. Yoga Ishvara, by greatly saintly personality. Vimrakya Angre, Lord Krishna's lotus feet which are sought. Loka, people in general. Yam, him. Manyate, consider. Naram, a human being. Translation. Together as well. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the master of all living entities and of the material nature. His lotus feet are sought and worshipped by great saintly persons like Vyasa. Nonetheless, there are fools who consider Lord Krishna an ordinary human being.
The example of Lord Krishna as being the Supreme Personality of Godhead is appropriate in regard to understanding the spiritual master. The spiritual master is called Sevaka Bhagavan, the servitor personality of Godhead, and Krishna is called Sevya Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is to be worshipped. The spiritual master is the worshipper God, whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is a worshipable God. This is the difference between the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Another point, Bhagavad Gita, which constitutes the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is presented by the spiritual master as it is, without deviation. Therefore, the absolute truth is present in the spiritual master, as clearly stated in text 26, Jnana Deepa Prade. The Supreme Personality of Godhead gives real knowledge to the entire world, and the spiritual master, as the representative of the Supreme Godhead, carries the message throughout the world. Therefore, on the absolute platform, there is no difference between the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If someone considers the Supreme Personality, Krishna or Lord Ramachandra, to be an ordinary human being, this does not mean that the Lord becomes an ordinary human being. Similarly, if the family members of the spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, consider the spiritual master an ordinary human being, this does not mean that he becomes an ordinary human being. The spiritual master is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore one who is very serious about spiritual advancement must regard his spiritual master in this way. Even a slight deviation from this understanding can create disaster in the disciples' Vedic studies and austerities.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada Ki. So today's topic is on spiritual master, and more specifically about understanding the spiritual master as Sevaka Bhagavan and Krishna as Sevya Bhagavan. So just to set the context a little bit, does anyone know who this conversation is happening between?
Between Narada Muni and Yudhishthira Maharaj.
Yeah, and so here Narada Muni is in this chapter. In this chapter, he's laying out first what makes a civilized human being. Second, the Varnashrama system, and then third, the types of brahmanas who execute their duties in the different stages of the Varnashrama system. And that leads to this specific section where he discusses spiritual master, and then he concludes by talking about his own history. So before we start, I think does anyone know what the 4 defects are of the conditioned soul?
I learned it by a thing called Mickey. So first it's like we can make mistakes, and then with the eye we are illusion, then we cheat, we have tendency to cheat and get cheated, and then we have imperfect senses.
Does anyone have any examples for these?
Suppose I'm seeing like a railway track, it looks like the 2 lines are converging, but because I can't see that far, I know that they're parallel, they don't converge, and that's because of my imperfect senses.
Yeah.
And glasses too, to see it.
Or if you see the sun, you can put your thumb on top of it and it looks like you covered the sun.
Yeah.
That's our imperfect senses. And then we're invariably delusioned that we think we're this body, and we put so much pride in this body that it's just flesh and blood and bones, and this is a little gross, but if you remove the skin from our bodies, we would be really scared to look at each other. But we still take so much pride in this body. And then we make mistakes. like it's one of the most famous quotes that to err is human. And you see this in like even like great personalities such as like political leaders or Gandhi, where it's like they were told that they would be attacked or whatnot, and they still pursued it. And then even though we're so imperfect, we have the tendency to cheat because we still pose ourselves as like great devotees, great people. Just there's so much pride. So it's through these four senses we can very much tell that we are kind of engulfed in passion and ignorance. And that's what verse 25 is saying, that our goal is to come out of that and to be more in the mode of goodness so that we can eventually just attain love of Godhead. But how do we do this? If we have imperfect senses, how can we approach a perfect truth? Yes?
Through Guru, pure devotee.
Yeah, straight cut to the chase. Yeah, through Guru. So we have to go through the medium of God. Like if you're trying to meet the prime minister, you can't just show up at the legislative offices and say, I want to meet the king or the legislature. You have to go through ambassadors. And the spiritual master in this situation is the ambassador. So there's there's a Prabhupada quote where he says, to err is human. A conditioned soul is very often apt to commit mistakes, and the only remedial measure to take against such unintentional sins is to give oneself up to the lotus feet of the Lord, so that he may guide one to avoid such pitfalls. So even Prabhupada has accepted that humans are very imperfect. Even if we try the most to be perfect, if we master all of our senses, we are still very imperfect. And he exemplifies this through himself as well. When I think one time he was in Mayapur, I believe, and there were a lot of reporters there, and someone asked him, Swamiji, are you perfect? And all of the news reporters were just waiting with their mics to catch this Swamiji and put him on the news and say, see, he's just like the other bogus, gurus and Swamijis. And Prabhupada gave a very nice answer. He said, personally, no. But every word that I am preaching is the unadulterated truth, which makes all of the words coming out of his mouth perfect. And that kind of shows the unbroken chain of instructions that we are receiving from our Guru, from Prabhupada, going forward through the Guru Parampara. So what is the definition of such Guru? Yes?
You're asking what is the definition of Guru?
Yeah.
Rupa Goswami mentions that if one controls 6 urges,
Yeah.
namely the urge to speak, the action, controlling the mind, not getting angry easily, controlling the tongue, belly, and genitals. And there's one more. And if one is able to control all 6 of those, then he can be considered a Guru.
Yeah, that's the first verse in Nectar of Instruction. But does anyone know the definition of the word Guru? Yeah.
Heavy? It means heavy? No?
Yeah. I mean,
Swami, we use the word, the controller of the senses, or is at the stage of where Anya Vilashi
that's true, but Guru, like the word Guru.
is the one who changes the darkness.
Yeah, so Gu means darkness. And that isn't darkness like the lights are off. It's the darkness sort of in our hearts, the ignorance that we don't know who we are, we don't know our position, we're living in darkness. And then Ru is the remover of it, which is why before we start, any major thing, we say the prayer, Om Agnanatimirandasya, where we're saying the spiritual master dispels the darkness by the torchlight of the truth. So that's a guru. Even though modern day you Google guru, you'll find yoga guru, soccer guru, karate guru, so many gurus. But these are all teachers, they're not true gurus. Guru is one of this. And there's 2 main qualifications a guru has. Does anyone know this? Yeah.
Compassion?
Yeah, that's a quality.
Who speaks from Sastras.
Yeah.
I think it should be, he should know the science of Krishna, and he should be able to deliver, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. A guru is one who knows everything. And when I say know everything, it doesn't mean the guru knows how long it takes for an eggplant to grow, or how long it's, or how far the sun is from here. Not that, because you can ask a farmer or an astrologer and they'll know these things. But a guru is one who knows the truth of questions that you can't ask anyone else, which, as Amla mentioned, that's the truth, the science of Godhead, the science of Krishna. And one who can convey that very strategically and practically. One who can teach it not in a very philosophical way where they just speak from impulsive random thoughts, but one who can connect it to the Shastra, which is coming from Krishna, and teach it in a very cohesive way. So I have a fun verse I wanted to share. Has anyone seen this verse before? It's a very nice verse. It says, Keshavam patitam drushtva pandava hasta nirbaraha rudanti kaurava sarve ha ha Keshava Keshava. So Keshava, Krishna, falls off of the chariot, and the Pandavas are laughing and laughing. And then rudanti kaurava sarve, the Kauravas are just crying, ha ha Keshava Keshava, oh Keshava. Does anyone remember where that pastime is from? Yeah.
It's when Krishna jumped out of the chariot to kill. No?
No, Krishna fell. Krishna fell off the chariot, and the Pandavas are laughing, and the Kauravas are crying. Does anyone know where that's from? It's an actual verse. I didn't write this. Yeah, well, that's because that pastime doesn't exist. In in this verse, Keshavam, Ke means dead body, and Shavam is floating on water. Patitam drushtva. But Pandava hashta nirbha. So Pandava also means fishes. So when there's a dead body floating on water, the fishes are very happy because they have food for many, many long time. And Rudanti Kaurava hasware sarve. Kau means bad or inauspicious, and Rava means like call or sound. So Kaurava is like a jackal or a wolf, like an animal that makes an inauspicious sound. So when there's a dead body floating in water, the fishes are very happy, but the wolves and jackals are very distressed because, they're jealous. So they're crying, ha ha, Keshava, Keshava, oh my God, there's our food stuff. It's not with us, it's in the water and we can't access it. So this verse is a very prime example of when we try to do it ourselves, the way we understand it is, oh, Keshava, yes, Pandava, yes, Kaurava, yes, Keshava, yeah, yes, I know Keshava. I don't need someone to explain it to me. But this is just one verse, and we're trying to approach Krishna through the Bhagavatam, to Bhagavad Gita, through all these books, which are like how many verses? Like hundreds of thousands of verses. So for that, we need a spiritual master. We need someone to tell us what the real meaning is, because when we try, we misunderstand it very easily. And this applies to more than just a Sanskrit verse. This applies to a lot in life. If I refer to the Bhagavad Gita, a lot of people say that, a lot of philosophers, a lot of Mayavadi philosophers argue that the Bhagavad Gita doesn't actually start until the second verse. Does anyone know why?
Because he's not ready completely to surrender, and he's not prepared to kind of grasp that knowledge that Krishna wants to deliver.
Yeah, because Krishna doesn't actually speak until the second verse. In the first verse, Krishna doesn't speak at all. And if, the Bhagavad Gita is the song of God, the first verse is, like a pre. But actually, the first verse is the most important because we're all living in the first verse. Yeah. Well, we're all living in the first verse still, because in the first verse, Arjuna is saying, Krishna, you're my dear friend. I love you very much, which is one step more than we are. We're still trying to love Krishna. But he's saying, Krishna, I love you very much. But I know what I'm doing. You just take me there. The same way we often approach Krishna, that Krishna, I know what's good for me. I know my schools, my work, my studies, my this. You just help me. You facilitate it. Please, Krishna, make this easy for me. There's not a lot of surrender. We're just treating Krishna as our chariot driver and nothing more than that, a friend and chariot driver. Krishna, I know what's best for me. You take me there. But until Bhagavad Gita 2.7, which is a very famous verse, Karpanya dosha prahata swabhava.
Here's some info about you.
That's when Arjuna actually falls to his knees and surrenders and says, now I'm confused about my duty and I've lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So our goal in life is actually just to get to verse 2.7, to get to this point of surrender. So the first chapter is actually the most relevant or crucial to the lives that we are living, because we're still trying to surrender unto Krishna. But because we can't surrender unto Krishna, we're trying to surrender unto our spiritual masters. Because our relationship, as the verse we're discussing today, it is stated that our spiritual master is non-different and should be worshipable as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because the spiritual master to us is non-different to the personality of Godhead, because our relationship with our spiritual master is our relationship with Krishna. And it is said in the Shastras that one who considers the spiritual master to be an ordinary person, their heart is non-different from a rock, because you don't see the truth. It's like there's lots of people who claim that Krishna is just a person. He was just a mischievous person who got to go to some war, give some, advisory services, nothing special. And we often say, okay, yeah, you're silly. That's not true. Similarly, the spiritual master is no ordinary human being, because in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's actually mentioned. It's said that the spiritual master it comes after so much mercy from the Lord that we receive a spiritual master to go back to Godhead. Because our goal in this life is to get the mercy of Krishna. Now, Krishna is so busy in his leelas. And there's like billions of souls trying to approach him. So we go to one more merciful. We go to Radharani. We say, Radharani, please give me Krishna's mercy. Please give me Krishna's time. Radharani is still a little bit more strict with Krishna. So then we approach Mahaprabhu, because Mahaprabhu came as the avatar of mercy. And Mahaprabhu is very merciful. But when you even look at the example of Jagai and Madai, Mahaprabhu was ready to kill them with the Sudarshan Chakra. But then comes the mercy of Nityananda, where Nityananda says, no, everyone deserves the love of Godhead. But we are still so unqualified that we struggle to approach Lord Nityananda. So then we have Prabhupada, who came and who gave us this holy name and this movement in a more practical sense, where, without Prabhupada, we wouldn't even have this opportunity to even know that we want to approach Krishna. But still, we're so fallen that we struggle to approach Prabhupada. So Prabhupada enabled so many of his messengers, which is the many acharyas in ISKCON, or the many gurus that we have, which are spiritual masters that we approach for diksha, or we approach for shiksha even. Those are all, it comes from the empowerment of Krishna, down. So it's like the mercy chain. Because we can't approach Krishna directly, we go through this long chain, but because it's an unbroken chain, it ends up quite perfectly in the end. But this raises a little bit of a dilemma, that if the spiritual master is the most humble, fallen, lowly person, or it's how he sees himself, how can disciples see him non-different from the Lord? Like, who is he really? Isn't that a little bit of an identity crisis? How can the spiritual master be non-different from the Lord, but also the most fallen servant of the Lord? Does anyone know?
Because of the devotion he has.
Yeah.
I think we should not see him as the most fallen or lowly person, because he sees himself as that. Because he's humble, he's not that, but because he's humble, he sees himself as that. But we should see him as equal to Krishna, equal to Godhead.
Yeah, exactly. The spiritual master is the most qualified. There's an interesting story for this, that there was a Sikh teacher, leader, and he was visiting Jagannath Puri. And when he was standing outside of the temple, a lot of his disciples were glorifying him, and he was taking it very nicely. And a lot of the locals in Jagannath Puri, a lot of the other devotees were thinking, oh my God, his ego's so inflated, like he's taking all this glorification from all his devotees. And then when he goes inside the temple and he's standing in front of Jagannath, this Sikh teacher, instead of glorifying Jagannath, he starts glorifying his teacher. And the Panditji of the Jagannath Puri temple is very confused. He's like, if you want to glorify your teacher, you can do that anywhere. Why are you coming to you're standing in front of Jagannath, you're coming all the way to see Jagannath, and you're glorifying your teacher? Why are you doing that? And the Sikh teacher calls him the priest down. He calls him outside, and he starts a small fire, like not a big fire, but just a small, like a little bonfire. And he tells the Panditji, okay, can you touch this fire? He's like, no, I'm not going to, can you touch fire? No, we can't touch fire. We can't. And he says, no, but you want to approach fire, so touch, can you touch the fire? He's like, no, I can't touch fire, I can't touch fire. And the Sikh teacher, he's like, okay, and he gives him a piece of wood, a wood stick, and he says, now can you touch the fire? He's like, yes, now I can touch the fire. So he's saying that is what the Guru is. The Guru is like that stick of wood that enables you to get to Krishna, because we cannot approach Krishna directly. He's like the medium that we go through, which is kind of leads into that every morning when we wake up for Mangala Arati at 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30, whatever. Mangala Arati is the most auspicious time, and that is when we're waking up the Lord, we're seeing the Lord wake up. And does anyone know what prayers we sing? Yeah, Samsara Dava means birth and death. But the name of the prayer is Guru Vashtakam. Why do we glorify the Guru when we're waking up Krishna? We have Guru Arati, we have Guru Puja. It's a very nice system we have. Why do we sing Guru Vashtakam first thing in the morning?
To be thankful he provided us the platform, and without him we wouldn't have known Krishna, and he gave birth to Krishna in our lives.
Yeah. Does anyone else know why we glorify Guru?
The Guru is very dear to Krishna, so Krishna likes it when his devotees are being worshipped.
Yeah. They're all right answers. That our connection, that if we think we can approach Krishna, even in the morning, even in the most auspicious hours, directly, we can't. So we glorify the Guru, and in the evening we glorify Mahaprabhu. But we start our days by glorifying the Guru, because without that glorification, we recognize that the different actions our Guru is doing for us, the different perfections, the way the Guru is behaving for us, the perfection that he displays, we recognize it and we respect it and we pay our obeisances to that, because that is how we truly allow ourselves to create this connection with Krishna. So there's a nice story that we're all quite familiar with, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, whenever devotees would come to see him, he would ask them, are you a devotee of Krishna? And if they said yes, he would say, okay, I have some meetings, I'm a little bit busy, come back tomorrow. And he would always just push off seeing them. He would never actually go and meet them. But if someone came and he asked them, are you a devotee of Krishna? And they said, no, I'm the devotee of 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 Krishna. Then you'd say, okay, come in, I have all the time in the world for you. So that is the mood of the spiritual master, that the spiritual master, although perfected in his spiritual practices, acts as the ambassador of Krishna for us and allows us to go back to Godhead, but also shows us through example of how the humble mood and the humble spirit we should have by having that humble mood and spirit towards their Guru. And because they have that perfection for their Guru and their Guru has it for their Guru, and it goes all the way back to Krishna, whenever we have surrender to our spiritual masters, or our spiritual master becomes Sevaka Bhagavan, or they become non-different from the Lord, because that worship or that praise that we give our spiritual master goes straight to Krishna through this, wonderfully perfect disciplic succession. But that is why it's important to have the right disciplic succession, because if you look at a star looks very, very small with our bare eyes. It looks no bigger than a speck of dust. But if we use a telescope, there's many different curved lenses inside, and through those curved lenses we can see the star or the moon or whatever in space a lot bigger. But if one of those lenses is tainted, then we can't see the moon. And if one of those lenses is broken or twisted, then we can't see the picture. Even if everything else is perfect, if one of it is broken, the whole succession is broken. Similarly, if there's a pilot trying to make a landing, even if he's off by 1 degree, that 1 degree becomes so exponentially large that he may land in, instead of landing in Canada, he may land in, Mexico. So that's why it's so important to have that perfection, or that perfect Guru Parampara. And that's why it's so important that when we approach our spiritual master, we do it in that humble, meek mood of the spiritual master being non-different from the Lord, because we simply don't have the qualifications or the mercy to go straight to Krishna. But Krishna has given us the mercy that he has given us this platform through which we can go back to the Lord. in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam, actually there's a similar verse which is repeated from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's in the Bhagavatam. And in this verse, it is Krishna being questioned by Uddhava, and he says, "One should know the Acharya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is representative of all the demigods." So here specifically, he's instructing a brahmachari on how to approach a spiritual master, but this is very much expandable into our lives, because we can see here that when we take shelter of this devotee, if we want nama tattva, or we want, if we want to understand the truths of Krishna, the holy name, any of the shastras, we have to go through the meaning of Guru Tattva. And the Guru Tattva is known as Ashraya Vigraha. Does anyone know the literal meaning of Ashraya? Shelter. And Vigraha is? Form. Yeah, deity, form. So Ashraya Vigraha is the shelter form, or the form of the Lord unto which we take shelter, which actually unlocks all these other truths or all these other privileges that we have. But it's very easy to say this very philosophically, that approach a spiritual master and surrender unto him and all will be good. But there's a more practical way to do it, because it is said that in this verse that without a parent, a child cannot grow, and similarly without a guru, a disciple cannot grow. So how do we actually take shelter? How do we, approach this Ashraya Vigraha? Sorry? There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter, if anyone knows it. Yeah. Yes, exactly. 34. Yeah. Does anyone know what's listed out in that verse?
You should approach spiritual master in a submissive way. I don't know the exact translation.
Just the main topics. We have to approach the spiritual master submissively. We have to exactly serve him and inquire submissively. So part of this is there's a nice pastime of Narottam Das Thakur, if anyone's familiar. So Narottam Das Thakur was he's from Mahaprabhu's Leelas, and at the age of 12, Mahaprabhu gave him the love of Godhead, and he became very, very aloof from this material world, and he simply would always say, "I want to go to Vrindavan, I want to go to Vrindavan." He just wanted to go to Vrindavan and chant. But his family, very obviously, was very concerned. They didn't want their son becoming a sannyasi or brahmachari. They wanted their son becoming quite wealthy, because Narottam Das Thakur comes from a very wealthy family where his dad was like a king's man, very, very wealthy. And so one time when his father, Krishnananda Datta, went to see the king called him and said, "Oh, there's some tax work you need to come and do." So his family left and he was alone. He ran away to Vrindavan within this time. But once he got to Vrindavan, he met a bunch of acharyas, and out of that, he was very much compelled to accept Lokanath Das Goswami as his spiritual master. Does anyone know what Lokanath Das Goswami said? He said no. Lokanath Das Goswami was so absorbed in his own chanting, and he didn't have any other disciples, but he was so absorbed in his own sadhana, his own life, that he didn't really want the stress or the time to take a disciple on. Because when a guru takes a disciple, when a sadguru or true guru takes a true disciple, there's a connection formed that the guru is taking the vow that they have to take the disciple back to Godhead. So Lokanath Das Goswami is saying, "I don't really want that." So Narottam Das Thakur begged and begged and begged, and he made a very compelling argument, and still the answer was no. So every single day, when Lokanath Das Goswami would use the washroom, because it was the olden days, it was like an outdoor shed type thing, and you had to manually clean it. But every single day after Lokanath Das Goswami would go, Narottam Das Thakur would sneak in and clean it for him. And this feels so gross to us. Like, we would forget spiritual master. We wouldn't even want to do it for our blood relatives. We think it's ew, I don't want to do that. But he did this for someone who hadn't even accepted him as a disciple. Every single day he would clean the stool of the acharya he wanted to accept as a spiritual master. And through this service, Lokanath Das Goswami became very confused. He did it anonymously. Lokanath Das Goswami became very confused. He said, who's cleaning this stool? Like, it's so dirty, but who is doing this for me? So one day at like 3 a.m., Lokanath Das Goswami was just, sneaking, and he was waiting outside of the shed when he saw Narottam Das Thakur sneak in to do this service for him. And because it was such anonymous, humble service, Lokanath Das Goswami became so overwhelmed by mercy that he accepted Narottam Das Thakur as his disciple. Now here's interesting to note that, in our parampara, does anyone know if we're a Shiksha parampara or a Diksha parampara? Yeah. Taking formal Diksha is actually a relatively new concept within the last 2 or 3 acharyas, but historically it's a Shiksha parampara. So you accept a spiritual master by following his instructions, or as it's mentioned by verse 4.34, by inquiring submissively, by rendering service, and to approach them humbly, which is what Narottam Das Thakur did here, and which is what our entire disciplic succession has been about. And through this service is how we can approach Ashraya Vigraha and actually get that most merciful form of the spiritual master, and eventually the most merciful form of the Lord. So, that's all I really had to share, but if there's any questions, or we can make it an open discussion.
So you're saying that the Guru is the Ashraya Vigraha form of the Lord?
Yes.
That's what you're saying? Sorry.
Does anyone have any questions?
Such a beautiful class.
Yes.
How do you know that the Guru that you're approaching, or the spiritual master that you're approaching, is the true Guru, and he's coming from a right disciplic succession?
Yeah, that's a good question. The qualifications, so as mentioned, the qualifications of the spiritual master is one, that he has the absolute knowledge of the love of Godhead, and the second, that he's able to convey it in a very comprehensible, practical way. But beyond this, the symptoms of that is, as mentioned, sympathy, love, humility, and you see, and this is very evidently displayed when there is a strong parampara system, because for gurus, it's not just any ordinary person who decided to be a guru. They're empowered souls that come from Krishna, just as his ambassadors. And this doesn't come just to any ordinary person, because we see in today's day and age, we see a lot of bogus gurus who, have a lot of businesses and like drive Rolls Royces and wear, Rolexes and live very, very posh lives. And although there's nothing wrong with that when we're pursuing our spirituality, that's not the position of a guru, one who enjoys that sense gratification. So those are some of the symptoms we see of a guru, and then when we approach them humbly, we can actually understand the truth.
This is when you have desire to love Krishna, Guru appears in your life. There are so many people, they get deceived by the bogus gurus, and their faith in the Supreme Lord, it just kind of gets destroyed forever. Why does it happen that you are leaving your home in the search of the Guru and you end up getting manipulated, deceived?
Very often, Krishna fulfills our subconscious desires that we don't even know we have. And I'm sure we've all experienced this, where like externally we're asking Krishna, like, Krishna, please give me love of Godhead. I don't want any material desire. And in the back of my mind, it's like, I just want to pass my exam. Please, Krishna, just love. And we don't even consciously recognize a lot of our desires sometimes. So when we go out looking for a spiritual master, sometimes if there isn't a certain degree of sukriti, or if we haven't actually purified ourselves to approach a spiritual master, our brain secretly, it just wants someone to fulfill our senses. And for a lot of people, that is the type of gurus they get. If someone wants material wealth, they will find a money guru, or like a Tony Robbins, or like one of these self-help gurus. And if someone, so it depends on what people are actually seeking. And very often people think they're seeking one thing, but they're not. So that's why we have to do a lot of like reflection as to what we want and why we want a guru. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's true.
Yeah. Um,
Can I share some reflections?
Yeah.
So I like the examples that you have given, practical examples like touching fire and like using the stick to get that messy. That is one thing that I like very much. And like the way you engage with the different questions is really nice.
Yeah. I have a question. A lot of time in our, like, if you think about everyone who's, a lot of the popular figures within Vedic philosophy, although the theme of guru is very heavily stressed in the Bhagavatam, where even Krishna had a guru, Ramchandra had a guru, everyone had a guru. Why are there figures within our scriptures that have gotten liberation without gurus? Can anyone think of any?
Rephrase the question.
Does anyone, like, it's questioning the philosophy, but we're often instructed that you need a guru to get love of Godhead. You can't get love of Godhead without guru. But there are some figures that have gotten love of Godhead without a guru. Does anyone know any?
Can you share some examples of which ones you're referring to?
I'm forgetting her name, but she's from Vrindavan and she left her husband and Mirabai, yes. So Mirabai didn't have a guru and she attained.
She had a guru, Ravi Dasi. Yeah.
But not officially, right? So.
No, it was official. It was official.
Okay. It was just a question, but it was I think in Prabhupada says that there's an external guru and then there's your Paramatma, which acts as a guru, and that Paramatma acting as a guru takes you to your external guru. So Mirabai actually, she I think from what I know, she attained the love of Godhead even before she met her guru, and then meeting the guru was an external manifestation that actually led her to Krishna. But she experienced that love of Godhead before. That's from how I understand it, but open discussion.
Mirabai in her previous life was in the Vrajabhumi, right?
Yes, yeah.
So she was already an elevated soul to be born there. And
Yes.
then the next birth, and when Krishna said to her, like, when
Yeah.
her mother instructed not to look at Krishna,
Yeah.
and Krishna was like, you're going to really miss looking at me in the next birth. So
Yeah.
I feel like her example is so sacred and divine. She's like a saint from her previous birth to be born in the Vrajabhumi and then taking form as Mira. So I think if we take her example and compare it to us human beings who are horrible, so it feels like a unfair comparison according to.
I agree. I 100% agree. But it was just sort of for the sake of saying, because a lot of I've gotten that conversation a lot, so I was just posing it. Yeah. But yes, the spiritual master is very, very important for our spiritual lives.
Because there are a lot of songs in Rajasthan, especially from the area where she was from, which says, Radhasji, they gave her the mala, that the Iktara that she used to play, and since that day she just kind of, the empowerment that she got was next level. And just had it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. So small question. So, living in today's century when human is full of doubts, he himself doesn't even trust himself, and when it comes to following his guru, sometimes we term it as there are bogus gurus, but in reality there are various gurus who have their own teachings which comes from within and which is being done through Sanjivani forms. However, in some or the other way, they are being accused falsely, and the followers whom they have, which are going through the right track, also confuse themselves with a sense of doubt. And because the doubt arises, we sometimes question someone who's having a genuine preaching towards us as well. And it continues, like sometimes through the form of justice, we say that like corruption takes place, a lot of other things place, and which takes off our devotion towards a specific guru. How do we understand at that point of time we should follow our intuition or we should just keep following, because there comes a separation with the devotees or the followers that the guru has. So how do we make out, as it was stated by Molin back then as well?
I'll open it up. Does anyone have any input to that?
Or could you just summarize? There's a lot of.
Okay, I'll make it quite precise.
Just like one sentence or something.
Okay,
Your question.
so regarding Krishna, we know that we have to follow him, and I'm just trying to relate it very supremely. I don't want to do that. Sometimes we know that we're following our heart. The Guru is precise, but the false side of the world try to accuse him because we use logic absolutely in today's world. And there comes a point when we see people who are using logic are more progressive according to the society. They must be right to the person who's spiritual. And we get puzzled ourselves in that situation. How do we fall? How do we not fall to the progressive world and keep focused with our intuition at that point? Because spirituality is something that is felt with it. It's an awakening, and yet there is a point where you feel, do you have delusions? Are you hallucinating? Because that's how people study with logic. So how to keep following your heart and keep following the things by not getting distracted that what I'm doing is stupid.
You want to answer that?
Yes.
Well, we have Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. So, way to judge if what your Guru is saying or doing is correct, we use the Shastra. Ultimately, Shastra is the supreme. It's the words of Krishna. So, this is the standard by which we use to understand who is Guru and who are Sadhus. So, if Guru is speaking according to the Shastra and acting according to the Shastra, then even if other people are saying something is not right, then we can have faith that it's correct. So we need to, that's why we have this checks and balance system, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. So it's important for us to study the scriptures to know what is right or wrong as well, because we have our own opinions about what's right or wrong, and for everyone that's different. But we have to look at the absolute platform, what Krishna is saying is right or wrong, and that can help us. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
I think that sums it up nicely.
I want to ask, Prabhu, I understood your question in two parts. One is how do you identify your guru in terms of him being a true guru, not the bogus one that you're referring to. And the second question you said is people who are being more logical, not spiritual, they're progressing more in life versus a spiritual person does not. So how do you keep having faith? These are your two questions.
So sometimes spiritually Guru is logical as well. But what happens is the absolutely logical people who do not believe in spirituality but science and do not have interest beyond science.
Yeah.
They state it in a way that you should not be doing that because belief and faith are two things which this is just a logical person who conveys this, that being spiritual and worshipping something, you're just wasting your time. And in a way it affects, because when you are logical, it makes you think that whatever I'm doing, why am I doing it? Like the given life is to understand the meaning of it and not just give up on something. Just believe that I am a body, I'm not the body, I'm not even the mind, I'm a soul who has this form in this planet in the form of a human. But this does not justify within heart seeing the injustice happening in the world. And then you feel you need to be more connected towards spirituality and have a belief for what you're born as. So, distractions.
I agree. My question there is you've separated both of them.
Yeah.
You're saying the logical piece is working, people who don't believe in God, that's like a separate thing, and you being spiritual is a separate thing. I feel in my little knowledge, I don't know nothing.
Yeah.
If I say something wrong, please pardon me. What I'm saying is like they both come together. They're not two separate things.
Sure.
If you are working in this world with your profession, with your family, doing your duties that Krishna has given you, you do them through spirituality. When Arjun says, I want to give up everything, Krishna does not say take sannyas. Krishna says, do dharam, kill them. You're a Kshatriya, it's your duty. So whatever duty Krishna has given to you, do that with logic, but with faith that it's Krishna guiding you, it's your Guru guiding you.
Right.
And that will give you more energy and more sameness to do it with more power. A lot of times I've seen people think that if it's another body means you give up things.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that as an individual, nor does my guru guide me like that. So what I have seen in my personal life in the last 1.5 to 2 years, ever since I've become spiritual, ever since Krishna accepted me, I've become better at my work. I'm doing much better in my family. I'm progressing economically, spiritually. in whatever little capacity. But I feel if you do good that is in sync with your guru, in sync with your shastra, they are your guiding force, but you're doing good work and more work and your focus will improve, you don't have to see those two things as two separate pieces. They will come together.
And the following question was, there comes a point when we conclude that these are two things that are together and not two separate identities. And the wrong side of the world starts accusing a good, like a great teacher as well. And it comes into media and stuff, and yet that guru keeps going. At that point, we take a back thinking that the way I was worshipping and the way I was thinking was that guru is teaching the true teachings of Krishna himself. And as they say that an honest person has to go through a lot of accusations, a false accusation. At that point, I'm not questioning the guru, but questioning the human being that we start getting distorted and we feel that, no, this is not true, like we just need to follow our path. So at that point, how do we convince ourselves that what we are doing is the right? And I got your answer that you're doing good economically and you're also doing good spiritually. So I got that answer. Thank you so much.
I think with the second piece that you just said, Prabhu, it's more like the world will test you in multiple times, right? But if you are in close proximity with your guru and you're seeing that their words and actions are matching, you've seen them live that life, you've seen them do their actions, your faith will become really strong. That these external things will not really push you completely away. You might, at that time, if you get association, that will really help. Try to be associated with devotees versus with outsiders who don't see the world like that. That can be good.
Thank you so much.
If I can add, Prabhupada really emphasized that this isn't some bogus, spiritual, baseless act. It's the science of Godhead. So it is very deeply logical. It's very deeply factual. Everything can be very much fact-checked, cross-checked, very it's a science. It's not. In modern day science is often, I'm not, condemning it at all, but a lot of it is beliefs and theories. And beliefs and theories are, I think this is how the world was made. I think, I have a theory. It's like the Darwin theory. It's not the Darwin fact. So there's a lot of theories. So it's, you can use it, you can have trust with your own senses as well. That when you inquire for a guru, first you inquire very submissively but very thoroughly. So the guru you pick, it's like this is science, this is fact. If someone tells you that you have 3 arms, you're not going to believe it. Even if, the prime minister comes and tells you you have 3 arms, you won't believe it. So because you have that faith, you see it. So with the guru, it's like, and the shastra, you have the faith, you develop that faith in the fact that you see it. This is how it is. It's not, baseless faith that there's some clouds and Krishna sits in some cloud. And no, it's fact, and you have that faith. And then no one can tell you otherwise because that's what faith is.
I just related it with the first statement when he stated that our senses, as he gave an example of a railing, and when he gave an example of the sun, that if we just put our finger, it goes off. That's not true.
Yeah.
So that's how I related. If that's not true, how do we think that he was sitting in the clouds is true? Maybe those were the unequal senses that we had as well. And then I realized that sometimes it is better not to question things when it comes to the Supreme Lord or Godhead himself. And yes, it is true that humans have not precise senses as to that when it comes to understanding it on a whole. But just sometimes faith and belief may take you to the place where you need to be. So,
I think it's approaching it from a place of humility, that our senses are imperfect, but that's the whole point of the class, that our spiritual master senses are not imperfect. And the Shastras are not imperfect. Like what's written in the Bhagavatam, what's written in the Gita, what's written in these Shastras, that's not imperfect. So that's why we believe that. Yeah. Jai.
favorite verses, trust me.
Yeah, they're good verses.
Yeah, they are in my favorites.